Is weird, odd, strange, or just plain bizarre is really your cup of tea? Then, the Golden State Media Concepts Weird News Podcast will give you that fix. Can't believe it? Well, listen for yourself as we deliver the strangest news you definitely won't find on CNN or Fox. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Weird News Podcast.
Hello, and thank you for tuning in to the GSMC Weird News Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Brittany Lawrence. So, I thought I would share with you a bit about why I am uniquely qualified to host a show about weird things, by sharing with you how I made dinner last night. It's my show, I can do what I want. So, I found a recipe for some sort of rotini chicken carrot thing. I cooked my pasta, 16 ounces of it. Apparently, recipe called for 12 ounces. No worries, I will just make some extra sauce. Open my bag of carrots and realize some of them have some weird brown goopy stuff on them. What even is that? They were not expired, so I don't want to give up my carrots. Okay, I use some tongs to get the offensive carrots out. Then I go to get my mushrooms. Apparently, I was wrong. I don't have mushrooms. I go ahead and make the sauce. Realize that though I thought I was making extra sauce, I actually did not come close to making enough. I'm also cooking chicken in my air fryer, and I'm usually pretty good at timing my air fryer. But today, I took out my chicken and it was woefully undercooked. So, I threw it back in. I decided to go ahead and put the pasta in the skillet, despite there very obviously not being enough sauce. I also realized at this point that the skillet is not big enough for all of the pasta, so I put the whole abomination in a larger skillet and continue on. Now I attempt to add the remaining seasoning, but this is basically like dry pasta. I made enough sauce for basically like a handful of rotini. Adding Parmesan did not help. I am now supposed to add lemon zest. I don't have any lemons. I added lemon pepper instead because it had lemon in the name. At this point, I check the chicken again. Still not cooked. Taste my pasta, so incredibly dry, way too much lemon pepper. I decided to make the sauce better by adding sour cream, which actually kind of worked. So at this point, I think I'm a genius. Realize even this unreasonably large skillet will not fit the pasta and the chicken once it finally cooks, so I decided to transfer everything back to the original pot I cooked the pasta in. I grabbed the handles of the pot, not realizing that I had left the burner on for the pot, seared my hands, throwing pasta everywhere, salvaged what pasta I could, cut up my now overcooked chicken, put it on plates, and dared my family not to eat it. That's how I live my life. Daily. I'm surprised how I haven't actually been in any of these weird news stories myself. At 35, I guess there's still time. I told you that story to tell you these. We're going to start off today with some of the absolute weirdest people in July 2020. We have a Minnesota man who decided regular water skiing just wasn't doing it for him anymore. A New York man who tried to fake his death, but honestly, not very well. A woman in a park in New Mexico snapped one for the gram with a very unusual and dangerous friend. And a couple New Yorkers trying to beat the heat end up in a dangerous situation with a very large swan. If you stick around to the end of the show, I'll be counting down the list of longest living animals. Because the longer you live, I'm pretty sure the weirder you get. It's one of the perks of age. Let's get weird. A Minnesota man decided that water skiing just wasn't the rush it once was. So he decided to take it to new heights when he went out on the lake wearing 11-foot stilts. 30-year-old Chris Denz of Brainerd said he was inspired to attempt the feat after seeing a video of Glenn Sperry water skiing on 8-foot stilts. I saw a video of him doing that and I thought, oh, that looks so cool. I want to do that, Den said. Sperry actually holds the world record for the extreme skiing on 10.5-foot stilts. He even corresponded with Dens and offered him tips when he informed him he was wanting to take on his record. Which, honestly, even though this is a weird news story, I am 100% here for people who just want people to be great, even if it outshines them. We just need all those kinds of people. You can be great. Help other people be great too. Then everyone is great. Good on you, Sperry. Dens built the stilts in the garage of his home. He used the advice he got from Sperry on the phone to guide him to build stilts that would get the job done. Den said he practiced on 3.5-foot stilts and worked his way up to 6.5-foot before jumping on the 11-foot stilts, which, honestly, I don't think he really understood the step-up method. You get about halfway there and then decide, yeah, I'm ready, let's do this. There were many failed attempts, of which he shared video. Dens estimated it took about 20 tries to finally get up on the high stilts. When he falls, it takes about 4 minutes to get the stilts built back up again to try another attempt. So that's a good hour and 20 minutes of failure, which I guess doesn't seem so bad in the grand scheme of things. I have failed at things for much longer in my lifetime. Despite the drops on Sunday, July 12th, Dens water skied around Hartley Lake on 11-foot tall stilts. It's an amazing feeling, Den said, of being 11 feet high water skiing. Just exhilaration. It's an exciting moment. There was quite a high. Glenn is a founding member of the Brainerd Ski Loon's water ski show team, and now they are planning to make stilt skiing a part of next summer's ski shows. Though Glenn doesn't officially hold the record yet, the evidence has been sent to Guinness in hopes of making his way into the record books. When asked why he did it, Dens responded, "It's every kid's dream to break a world record, whatever it might be. It just seems like this was right up my alley, and I looked at it and thought, I could do that." Now, there are the "that looks awesome, I want to be great at that awesome thing" people. Then there is this next guy, Robert Berger, 25, of Huntington, New York, decided he didn't really feel like going to jail for alleged crimes he probably committed, but he also didn't actually want to die. So he decided his only real option was to fake his death. He had it figured out. He would get a fake death certificate and send it to the courts through his lawyer, and nothing could possibly go wrong with this foolproof plan. He now faces up to 4 years in prison if convicted in the alleged scheme. That's in addition to pending sentences for earlier guilty pleas to charges of possession of a stolen Lexus and attempted grand larceny of a truck. Punishment prosecutors say he was looking to avoid. It will never cease to amaze me the length some people will go to avoid being held accountable on criminal charges, Nassau County District Attorney Madeline Singas said in a telephone interview. During a coronavirus-friendly arraignment, I'm guessing they Zoomed, Berger pleaded not guilty to a single count of offering a false instrument for filing. A judge set bail at $1, which I think is one of the funniest parts of this story, but ordered Berger back to jail because of his underlying cases. His next court date is scheduled for July 29th. Scheduled to be sentenced to a year in jail last October on the theft-related charges, Berger fled the state. He then convinced his then lawyer, prosecutors, and the judge that he had killed himself, allegedly using his fiancée to pass along a bogus death certificate, prosecutors said. At first glance, Berger's purported death certificate looks like an official document issued by the New Jersey Department of Health, Vital Statistics and Registry. It actually wasn't too bad. I saw the picture, but there was one big problem. Registry was spelled Regsitry? R-E-G-S-I-T-R-Y. There were also inconsistencies in the font type and size that raised suspicions. I'm surprised at the lengths he went through to keep himself out of jail, but couldn't find anyone to proofread? That's just poor planning. The real New Jersey Department of Health, Vital Statistics and Registry confirmed that Berger's death certificate was a fake, prosecutors said. Berger was alive, but despite his best attempts to the contrary, he had actually been arrested in suburban Philadelphia on charges, including allegations he provided a false identity to law enforcement and stole from a Catholic college. He was sentenced in January to up to a year in jail, according to Pennsylvania court records. I feel like there's a lot going on here, a whole lot to unpack. Like, the court document wasn't half bad, despite not taking the time for a little proofing. You gotta stop being a criminal for a bit, though, if you want it to hold. Speaking of people that just can't help themselves, but probably should, a woman in Mexico decided to take a selfie with a black bear recently while visiting an ecological park in San Pedro Garza Garcia, Mexico. In the stunning video, a black bear walks right up to a group of hikers and begins sniffing a woman's hair. First of all, what shampoo are you using? Because you need to stop that immediately if it is attracting bears. It makes me rethink my whole method of shampoo choice. No more fruit. Because absolutely not. Second of all, you're just chilling out, letting some wild animal sniff your hair? Are you missing the ability to logic? The bear was very interested in the woman who was hiking with friends. Everyone seems to stay calm, which, I mean, good on you. But then the woman decides that there has never been a better time than right now to get a picture. She takes a selfie with the bear, who acts like he knows exactly what is going on and seems to pose for the photo. It seems like all is well and good until the bear begins to walk away, before turning back and making a beeline for the same woman, and this time he tries to bite her, and he swings his paws at her before casually walking away. Look, y'all, bears are out here casually trying to kill you. What are you even thinking? For obvious reasons, the woman's actions are not something experts encourage you to do if you encounter a bear in the wild. In fact, it's best for you to yell loudly and make as much noise as possible to hopefully scare the bear from the area and preserve its natural fear of humans. The park said in a statement on its website that the bear was displaying an abnormal behavior caused by human beings. Park officials said plans are being put into place to capture the bear due to its lack of fear of humans. The statement said the park will implement strict measures to prevent future potentially dangerous interactions between people and bears. So basically, this woman and her friends are the people that they end up writing warning labels for. You know when you read something like, "This pencil is not to be used as an earplug," and you're like, what? Who would do that? Bear selfie girl. Honestly, guys, just leave wild animals alone. Speaking of poor decisions, firefighters in New York rescued 2 wayward people when their inflatable swan float was suddenly carried away by a fast-moving current and soon put them right smack dab in the middle of heavy marine traffic. The New York City Fire Department said officials received a report of multiple people in the water near East 55th Street in Manhattan, and an FDNY Marine unit arrived to find 2 people in a swan float had been swept away by the swift current. The 2 were rescued and monitored by EMS staff before being allowed to leave with no injuries. FDNY urges New Yorkers to always take precautions when swimming or entering the water surrounding our city. They added only the water where swimming is permitted and where lifeguards are on duty. I've been to New York City. I'm surprised anyone thought anything strange about it at all. New Yorkers have always been known to find creative ways to beat the heat. Perhaps instead of taking their swan to the East River, those 2 should have considered investing in an inflatable pool, what the Washington Post is calling the official symbol of America's lost summer. Several were spotted around the city this weekend. People from uptown to the Bronx were seen setting up portable pools to try to counteract the sweltering heat of a New York summer. No word on the social distancing precautions. When we come back, we'll head to Europe and apparently learn about bootleg helicopters. Meet a stubborn dog who is simply not having the big move. Find out what happens when a mad woman wants to argue, but the other party isn't interested. And find out the weirdest way a hostage situation has ever ended.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC to the extreme cage fighting, we got the fights covered.
Listen.
It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts, past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
Welcome back. In our previous Weird News jaunt, we went water skiing on X Games mode, 11 feet in the air, found out the wrong way to fake your death, learned that bear selfies should most certainly not be a thing, and that inflatable swans are not a valid or safe river flotation device. At the end of the show, I'll be counting down the craziest animals with the longest lives. In my first Weird News podcast, I talked about bootleg alcohol in the Prohibition era, which honestly is exactly what I think of when I hear the word bootleg. But apparently, in a bid to be the bootleg to out-bootleg them all, Moldova recently shut down an illegal bootleg helicopter factory. How one hides a whole helicopter factory is beyond me. I'm guessing it wasn't just in some dude's backyard. The Moldovan Prosecutor's Office for Combating Organized Crime and Special Cases and investigators from the Police General Inspectorate closed a factory in the east of the country on Tuesday that was producing copies of Quahog Ka-26 Soviet-type helicopters. A secret factory creating Russian helicopters, which honestly sounds like something straight out of a James Bond movie. Over the past several months, the police documented the illegal activity of a well-organized group of people specializing in the production of helicopters, the Interior Ministry said in a press release. The near-completed helicopters were about to be illegally exported to former Soviet countries. Searches carried out on Tuesday found that there were over 10 helicopters on the production line at various stages of completion. I feel like there are so many layers to this story that we are obviously not privy to. There has to be one mastermind, right? Someone bankrolling the thing? A supervillain, if you will. Then that supervillain has his underlings, and then the workers who perhaps don't even know they are doing anything illegal and just trying to feed their family. I'm creating a whole narrative here, I'm aware. Most of the people suspected of being involved in the production and assembly process, including the organizers and heads of the illegal operation, are residents of Moldova's breakaway Transnistrian region. I'm still not entirely sure what the Transnistrian region is, but it looks to be a breakaway state in Moldova that doesn't want to be Moldova and keeps fighting about it, but loses a lot. So now, apparently they are building helicopters to try and build up some wannabe country cred. According to Wikipedia, they are an unrecognized but de facto independent, which basically says, okay, do your own thing until you build illegal helicopters, then you actually can't. All the helicopters were produced without the necessary permits and documents of origin for the parts and equipment used. A criminal case for preparing to smuggle aircraft by 2 or more persons has been initiated by prosecutors. If found guilty, the suspects could face jail sentences ranging from 3 to 10 years, according to Moldovan law. That actually seems like a pretty light sentence for creating an evil lair for building war machine helicopters that they were going to sell to other warlords all over the world to create immense fear and panic. I mean, I'm assuming that's what they were doing. I'm going to need more info on this, or I'll just assume my story is true. In some more they had it coming news, a Louisiana woman decided she had enough of her boyfriend's nonchalant attitude and shot him when he refused to argue with her. 29-year-old Janisha Lawrence is now in custody after shooting her boyfriend around 7:30 a.m. on July 18th. Police responded to the call of gun violence and found the 34-year-old man in question bleeding on the ground. He was taken to a local hospital with life-threatening injuries, but is expected to survive. During the investigation, police found out that Janisha was just tired of him not arguing with her when she was ready to fight it out. Basically, this girl could star in her very own one-woman Chicago show. Janisha fled to Dallas, where she is originally from, but eventually surrendered to authorities on Monday. Following interviews with detectives, she was booked into the Shreveport City Jail on her warrant of attempted second-degree murder, Shreveport police said in a news release. Here's the thing. I never condone violence. It's just not my style. But I get it. If you're in the throes of an exceptionally good point and no one wants to acknowledge you, I feel that. This got me looking through a bunch of Reddit threads about wives mad at their husbands, and one struck me. A husband got his wife a weight loss kit for her birthday and couldn't understand her disdain for him days later. It also reminded me of this past Mother's Day. My husband got me a Dyson V11 vacuum. I loved it. I mean, I'm obsessed with it. I don't even care if the kids get crumbs on the floor because I get to use my fancy vacuum. 25-year-old me would have been mortified. 35-year-old me was happy as a clam. Now, to be fair, I had asked for a hand vacuum because my old one was on the verge of death. So he just went a bit extra with it, as he tends to do. So you kind of have to know your audience. I feel like this guy probably had a decent idea of the mental state of his estranged girlfriend. I mean, people don't just suddenly become the kind of person who shoots someone in an argument. That's some buildup. And on continuing an argument when someone has stopped listening, Cleo, a 4-year-old Labrador retriever, went missing from her home in Kansas, only to show up 60 miles away at her owner's old house. She originally went missing from her house in Olathe, Kansas on July 12th and turned up on her old porch in Lawson, Missouri, several days later. Colton Michael, the new owner of the house, found the pup and had her scanned for a microchip, which helped to return her to her owners. I think there was definitely a failure to communicate between dog and owner here. Obviously, Cleo had been putting out some hard signs that she was not interested in this move, but somehow the move still happened. So her final act of defiance was just to move her happy butt right back home. My wife and I had just gotten home from work, Michael told CNN. Cleo was laying on the front porch at the front door, just laying there, waiting for somebody, it seemed like. She was just letting you know this was her home now. Signed, sealed, delivered. Might as well hand over the deed and she'll give it a good paw signature. Cleo was obviously anxious about the new owners, but Colton managed to gain her trust enough to scan for the microchip, which luckily had been updated by her rightful owners. She finds her way home, and there's some strangers living in it. That would be scary for anybody, Michael told local broadcasters KMBC. His wife recognized the name as the previous owners who had moved in 2018. 2 years later, and this dog was still holding a grudge. Cleo's family had posted on Facebook for any information regarding the whereabouts of their beloved pup, and were absolutely dumbfounded when Colton called and told them where she had actually been found. Cleo would have had to travel at least 57 miles on her trip home, which included crossing a river or a bridge heavy with traffic, KMBC reported. Hell hath no fury like a woman scorned, and Cleo was not letting this argument die. It's the most bizarre story, really. She's everything to us and to my mother, Drew, Cleo's owner, told the outlet. It just feels really good to be reunited with her. On the upside, if Cleo ever decides to try and make the trip again, at least everyone involved will know where she belongs, though Cleo may have something to say about that. This next story is probably the most bizarre headline I have read in a while, and feels like it can't possibly be true, yet it is. According to Variety, an armed man in Ukraine held 13 people hostage and demanded the country's president publicly endorse a Joaquin Phoenix film before he'd free them. This is absolutely a real thing. According to the New York Times, a standoff between the hostage taker, identified as Maxim Kravash, a 44-year-old man with previous convictions, and the police lasted nearly 12 hours. One of the man's demands was that President Vladimir Zelensky tell Ukrainians to watch the 2005 film Earthlings, narrated by Phoenix. I always thought this was a crazy plot point in hostage movies, like never have I ever watched a movie or read a story where someone says, I want a plane and a passport and McDonald's before I let these hostages go, and they get so much as a Big Mac. But maybe I was just looking at it wrong. Maybe if you want to get somewhere with someone, just change what you're asking for. Make it something that means something to you, but maybe a bit more palatable, like Joaquin Phoenix. At one point, Zelensky agrees to talk to Kravash, and they had a 7 to 10 minute conversation in which it was agreed 3 people, a wounded person, a pregnant woman, and a child would be released in exchange for posting the video. The president then posted a now deleted brief video on his Facebook referencing the film Earthlings. I think the fact that he deleted the post is pretty hilarious because we all know the internet never forgets. The film is about many different things, including the use of animals in agricultural and scientific industries, and apparently has hidden camera footage of animals suffering. It also compares speciesism to racism and sexism among humans. It doesn't sound like the happiest of films. Once Kravash had confirmed the presidential endorsement of the film, he released all his hostages and surrendered himself to police. None of the hostages were harmed. Kravash was all in on the movie thing, as he purportedly showed the film to the hostages he had taken. He had seized a bus on Tuesday in Lusk, posted his manifesto and his demands on Twitter beforehand, and then went all in on his strange animal rights protest. Along with the Earthlings endorsement, Kravash also asked the government officials and members of the Ukrainian Orthodox Church post messages saying that they are terrorists. I don't think that one happened, but I suppose the point is to make a big list and take what you can get. Kravash was armed with a rifle and explosives, and several of the bus windows were struck by bullets. But incredibly, no one was injured. According to the New York Times, Zelensky issued a statement after the hostages were freed, and Kravash was arrested, saying, "We were not fighting for ratings. We were fighting for lives." I haven't found anything yet on whether Joaquin Phoenix had put out any statements regarding his connection to the hostage situation. I'm guessing he probably wants to distance himself from that as much as possible. When we come back, we will stay weird and probably get weirder as we find out where the world's largest Lamington is, figure out what MIT and deepfake have in common, meet another not-so-bright criminal who tried to hire someone to murder her husband and failed, and meet the king of petty when a man decides to really enforce his supposed property rights in the most insane way.
Are you tired of the same old news? Are you sick of the seemingly endless political spin and negativity? The GSMC America's Still Beautiful podcast is a weekly news podcast covering all the top positive and uplifting news stories. We cover stories that will inspire, uplift, and remind you of the good in the world. Tune into the Golden State Media Concepts America's Still Beautiful podcast to get all the great and positive news stories of today. Download the GSMC America's Still Beautiful podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
Thanks for hanging out, guys, and welcome back. Before the break, we learned that bootlegging isn't just for alcohol, that sometimes we need to read the situation a bit better from our significant others, at least the ones who seem like they might try and shoot you, that you should consult with your pets before making any big moves, because honestly, they might not want to leave, and that if you are ever going to be the perpetrator of a hostage situation, that you should keep your demands weird, but simple, if you have any hope of getting them fulfilled. Lesson learned. Our first stop is in New Zealand, where a charity broke a Guinness World Record when a team of chefs cooked up a giant chocolate lamington. I had never heard of this dessert before, so I had to look it up, and it sounds delicious. Basically, it's a cake made from butter cake and sponge cake. So cake made with cake, I'm all in so far. then coated in an outer layer of chocolate. And then the chocolate is covered in chocolate sauce. So far, we have cake made out of cake and chocolate covered in chocolate and then rolled in coconut. Yep, 10 out of 10 would eat. Auckland charity Cook's Night Off, a food delivery charity that gives one meal for every meal purchased, teamed with the Creative Edge Food Company, a wholesale bakery, to combine 13,000 eggs with 1,433 pounds of sugar and 1,102.31 pounds of flour to create the giant Lamington. The event took place on World Lamington Day, the 21st of July, and weighed in at a massively spongy 6,106.8 pounds. The dessert smashed the previous Lamington record, held by the Australian Bakery Quality Desserts and the Toowoomba Chamber of Commerce in 2011. Their cake weighed a measly 5,205 pounds. It's like they weren't even trying. The cake was distributed to spectators at the event, and anything left over will be donated to the Auckland City Mission for distribution, organizers said. This story obviously set me down a food rabbit hole. I ended up in Japan, as most weird rabbit holes want to do. Umwaka Restaurant in Anjo City, Japan, offers a specialty maki roll. The monstrous roll weighs in at more than 13 pounds and is a record breaker. You can devour this massive creation with a reservation and a mere $197. The World Records Academy has deemed the roll the world's largest sushi dish. It has 24 different ingredients, including many kinds of fish, shellfish, and vegetables, wrapped in 2 meters of seaweed and rice. Sushi is hands down my favorite food. I like to think I would destroy this sushi challenge, but in reality, most of the time my eyes are bigger than my stomach. It reminded me of this time my husband and I were staying in this Airbnb in New York City that was right above a sushi restaurant. One night we went out to get some dinner across town and ended up thrust in the middle of a pride parade. I can't explain to you how one accidentally ends up in a pride parade. All I can say is that it's possible. And if you do, you absolutely cannot get out. We spent 2 hours in the midst of the chaos that is New York City Pride. Eventually, we finally got a police officer to move some barricades so we could somehow make our way home. 3 hours later, and as I was 7 months pregnant and now walking barefoot on the streets of New York because my feet were now the size of bowling balls, we decided to just have sushi underneath our apartment. We ordered the $50 sushi platter because I told my husband I was starving. Let me tell you, I was not much help on the platter because pregnancy is a fickle monster, and my husband was not going to let a sushi platter go to waste. He basically morphed into a sushi roll when all was said and done. But yeah, with that being said, I would definitely try with Monster Sushi and the Mountain of Lamington. Now, these two food stories are true, as is my getting stuck in the New York City Pride Parade. But some researchers at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, or MIT, have recently decided to bring to light the lies. The internet is full of them. They launched a website that uses a video of Richard Nixon giving a speech he never delivered to educate the public about the challenges posed by such deepfakes. It's the nature of the world we live in. Literally every time someone posts a video on Facebook of something even vaguely questionable, I begin my Google treasure hunt. Almost 100% of the time, I can figure out if what I just watched is true by either finding the original video or finding articles by individuals debunking the mentioned deepfakes. The researchers at MIT's Center for Advanced Virtuality said they spent a year and a half creating the video of President Nixon delivering the real contingency speech that was written in 1969 to be delivered in the event of a disaster during the Apollo 11 moon landing mission. The In the Event of Moon Disaster video is known as a complete deepfake. The creators manipulated both the video and the audio, which creates an illusion that Nixon had actually delivered the speech on camera. None of it ever happened. The Nixon video now is the centerpiece of the Center for Advanced Virtuality's website, moondisaster.org. Its singular aim is to educate the public about the existence of technology that can create realistic videos of fictional scenarios. Media misinformation is a long-standing phenomenon, but exacerbated by deepfake technologies and the ease of disseminating content online, It's become a crucial issue of our time, said Fox Harrell, professor of digital media and of artificial intelligence at MIT and director of the MIT Center for Advanced Virtuality. It's true. At this point, so many people just see something and automatically believe it as hard truth, which until recently would have been perfectly fine since technology wasn't really at the creating fake historical videos point. Now you absolutely cannot trust your first watch of anything. Francesca Panetta, the team's creative director, said the aim is to educate the public about deepfakes and encourage media consumers to more carefully consider the legitimacy of what they see and hear. Basically, fact check. Fact check and then fact check. Nixon never gave that speech. It never happened, despite the video existing. This alternative history shows how new technologies can obfuscate the truth around us, encouraging our audience to think carefully about the media they encounter daily, Panetta said. More than ever, especially during election years, videos are everywhere. It's worth it to take the extra time to make sure what you are posting is actual reality. It's 2020, things are weird, but make sure it's the kind of weird that's backed up with facts. Just makes things easier for all of us. Speaking of fake, evidently rentahitman.com is a real website, which doesn't actually follow through. One Michigan woman found this out the hard way when she inquired about hiring someone to off her ex-husband. She had apparently saved up $5,000 for the event and was ready to get the deal done. Unfortunately for Wendy Wine, a 51-year-old from South Rockwood, the website was bogus, and she was arrested after she completed a service request form requesting a consultation to help her with an issue, Michigan State Police said Tuesday. In the request form, Wine specified her ex-husband as the target of her problems. Police said in a news release, the owner of the website contacted the Michigan State Police because he was concerned that Wine may be attempting to kill her husband. Once the concern was validated, an undercover state trooper posing as a hitman then met with Wine in a parking lot in her hometown. Police said it was then that Wine offered the undercover officer $5,000 to take care of her ex-husband, who lived in another state. Wine was arraigned Tuesday on charges of solicitation to commit murder and illegal use of a computer to facilitate a crime. The owner of www.rentahitman.com launched the website in 2005 and told investigators he had been contacted numerous times by people requesting murders, school shootings, and even a child abduction, state police said. The owner has claimed that his website has been responsible for preventing over 130 murders because he refers all requests for hitmen over to law enforcement. The best part of the whole website for me is that it features bogus customer testimonials and is billed as a point-and-click solution for those looking to solve a problem that needs resolving. I mean, the fact that anyone even believes for a second that something like this could actually exist and that you wouldn't be found out is mind-blowing to me. The form is equally as laughable, as it even claims this form is valid for one individual only. If you have multiple targets, please submit multiple forms for processing. Michigan State Police Lieutenant Brian Oleksick is equally as surprised at the website's success. I can't believe someone would think that a website like this exists, Oleksick told the station. Wine, however, was convinced, and it was ultimately what ended her up in jail. Bob Ines, the creator of the site, is not surprised, however, laying claim that he has already received 2 new murder-for-hire requests since Tuesday. He started the site as a class project in 2005 and has been catching would-be murderers ever since. We're going to end our weird news collection today with the Petty King. I love a good petty dispute, and this one is fantastic. This particular disagreement has ended with a man sawing his neighbor's garage in half with a sawzall after getting into a series of disputes over the property. After getting confirmation from 2 different land surveyors that the neighbor's garage was indeed partially on his property, Gabriel Braun decided to take the next step in the ever-growing, spiteful relationship with the man next door. The relationship between the 2 properties was not always so stressful. When the original owner, Steve Ritter, died in 2016, his wife, Teresa Lath Ritter, took over ownership, but was rarely there. She eventually began to rent out the house to various tenants. That is when everything deteriorated. When the dad, Steve Ritter, was alive, this was a perfect place to live. Tracy, the wife of the saw-wielding disgruntled neighbor shared. As soon as that poor man passed away, this place turned to craziness and chaos. The couple even attempted to buy the property, but that attempt was unsuccessful. In April, tensions between the two parties escalated after the Bronze put a load of wood chips near a previously established boundary so that a tractor could travel downhill and grab the downed tree limbs on their property. This apparently did not sit well with Ritter's youngest son, as he placed a stake in the ground where the chips had been placed. He said, "This is our property. Get your stuff off it." "So we had to call a land surveyor," Tracy said. The first surveyor determined that the dividing line between the properties was right through the middle of the garage. The tenants probably saw where this was going and were obviously much better at reading a room than some of our other weird news inhabitants, because the day the surveyor came and set the pins, the tenants that were there packed up and moved out that night, Braun said. After a second land surveyor said the same, the youngest Ritter asked if he could remove his father's ashes from the garage. The Braun said of course, but Ritter instead began to empty the garage and throw trash and old furniture debris everywhere, including over the property line. That was the last straw, as Braun, who works in construction, then took his saw and got to work. He, of course, left all the remains from his project on the other side of the property line. Then they built a fence. Because, as Tracy put it, fences make good neighbors. That's what we've learned from this. On that note, we've got through all of today's weird news. Our next segment will be our top 10 countdown of the world's longest living animals, as compiled by Famous Wonders. I've noticed you get a lot more freedom to be as weird as you want the older you get. Some of these animals definitely fit that narrative.
The GSMC Life and Happiness podcast takes you on a journey of exploration. We'll discuss tried and true methods alongside the latest trends of how to best live your life to its fullest and happiest. From psychology to meditation, science to self-help books, the GSMC Life and Happiness podcast will help you to discover what makes you happy and how you can live life being the best you possible. Download the GSMC Life and Happiness podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
Thanks for hanging out till the end of the show. In our last segment, we met the ultimate in petty neighbor, foiled a murder-for-hire plot, exposed the deepfake, and explored the upper limits of food design. Now we're about to count down the top 10 longest-living animals. Some of them are truly unbelievable. The longest-living human was a 122-year-old woman named Jean Calment, but that pales at the life expectancy of some of the animals on our list today. Number 10. The Tuatara. The Tuatara is a lizard-like reptile that is found in New Zealand. Tuataras have very slow growth rates, as they do not reach full size until around the age of 35. They can live to be over 100 years old, and some experts say that a Tuatara living to be 200 would not be out of the question. Tuataras are the only known, closely related living descendants of dinosaurs. They are endangered, with only about 60,000 left in the world. These animals remain fertile very late into their lives. Recently, in captivity, a 110-year-old Tuatara named Henry mated with an 80-year-old female Tuatara named Mildred, and they produced 11 healthy babies. Henry is still in very good health and is expected to live for several more decades. Number 9. Bowhead Whale. Making the list as the oldest known mammal, the bowhead whale has been estimated to reach ages of over 200 years. Originally, it was thought that most bowheads only lived 60 or 70 years, like most other whales, but recent studies and findings suggest otherwise. For example, one whale that was captured near the Alaskan coast was found to have the tip of a harpoon lodged in its neck fat. Research showed that the harpoon was manufactured and probably used around 1890. Other amino acid racemization tests of bowhead whale eyes have dated them to be 150 to over 200 years old. It is worth noting that some in the scientific community find these tests to be unreliable. Number 8. Red sea urchin. It was initially thought that red sea urchins only lived for around 15 years. Recent studies, however, revealed that these creatures frequently live to be over 100 years old, and some have been found to be over 200 years in age. By measuring isotope carbon-14 levels in the red sea urchin, scientists were able to determine their ages and also get a better idea for their growth rates. The largest and oldest red sea urchins have been found off the coast of British Columbia and near Vancouver Island. This species protects itself from predators with its sharp spines that stick out in all directions. Interestingly, they also use these spines as stilts to walk around the ocean floor. Red sea urchins only live in the Pacific Ocean, mainly along the North American coast. Number 7. The tortoise. The oldest known vertebrae on the planet are tortoises, and it is not entirely uncommon for one to live into its late 100s. The oldest unconfirmed tortoise was an Aldabra giant tortoise at the Alipore Zoo in India, named Adwaita, which many people believe to be around 250 years old. Other famous ancient tortoises include a Galapagos tortoise named Harriet, who lived to be 175, a spur-thighed tortoise named Timothy, who died at the age of 165, and a Seychelles giant tortoise named Jonathan, who is estimated to be 178 years old. Number 6. Freshwater pearl mussel. The freshwater pearl is a type of endangered mussel that is known for making high-quality pearls. The search for valuable pearls is the main cause of their near extinction. Valery Zwiganov, a Russian malacologist, recently discovered that this species shows signs of negligible senescence. This means that the freshwater pearl mussel does not show signs of aging. Valery Zwiganov, along with several other scientists, published a detailed report in 2000 that backs up the belief that these freshwater pearl mussels can often live to be between 210 and 250 years old. Today, this species is protected in nearly every European country. Number 5. Lamellibranchia tubeworm. Lamellibranchia tubeworms are colorful, slow-growing, deep-sea creatures that live next to hydrocarbon vents that exist on the ocean floor. It is common for them to live for more than 170 years, with some estimated to reach over 250 years of age. Some of the oldest ones can grow to be more than 10 feet long. The most widely known area where they exist is in the northern portion of the Gulf of Mexico, at a depth of around 500 to 800 meters. These tubeworms use a special body extension called a root to collect hydrogen sulfide from the environment in order to survive. Number 4. Ocean quahog. The ocean quahog is an edible clam which has been confirmed to live for more than 500 years. Notably, this mollusk is thought to be an example of negligible senescence, which means that it does not show signs of aging. The ocean quahog has many names, including the Icelandic cyprine, black quahog, black clam, and mahogany quahog. They are found in the northern Atlantic Ocean in both deep and shallow waters, where they are frequently harvested for food through the process of dredging. The age of a quahog can be established by counting growth rings that appear on its shell. As they get older, they tend to grow more slowly, hence the growth rings get closer and closer together. This can make it difficult to determine the exact age of a specimen. Number 3. Antarctic sponge. Found in the cold waters of the Antarctic Ocean, the Antarctic sponge is a slow-growing, multicellular organism. Some of the sponges located here have been estimated to be at least 1,500 years old. This particular creature is without a protective shell. Thus, it is easy for predators such as turtles or fish to harm or kill them. This makes it even more amazing that some of these sponges have lived for so long. Interestingly, sponges do not have digestive, circulatory, or nervous systems, but rather rely on water flow to survive. As water runs through them, they get oxygen and food. The water also carries away waste. Number 2. Hydra. The Hydra is a tiny freshwater polyp that is related to coral sea anemones and the jellyfish. Similar to the Terratopsis Nutricula jellyfish, the Hydra has regenerative powers. Every time you cut one of these tiny creatures apart, each piece quickly develops into a new Hydra. Hydras do not appear to age at all. Their bodies are tubular in shape and have a mouth on one end that has poisonous tentacles. The Hydra uses its tentacles to paralyze insects and crustaceans, after which it consumes them. They only grow to be a little less than an inch long. However, they can consume prey that is up to twice their size. These strange creatures move around by utilizing a cup-like foot or pulling themselves along with their tentacles, and then somersaulting. Number 1. Terratopsis nutricula jellyfish. The Terratopsis nutricula is often referred to as the immortal jellyfish. Once this species has become sexually mature, it is capable of reverting back to the polyp stage and essentially starting its life over. The jellyfish accomplishes this through cell transdifferentiation, in which its cells can turn into other types of cells. For example, its muscles can change into eggs or sperm, and life regeneration can begin again. Most Terratopsis die when they are eaten by other animals, or if they get a disease while in the initial polyp stage. It is unclear how long one of these creatures lives, as knowledge of their regenerative capabilities was not discovered until the 1990s. Additionally, it is hard to monitor them in their natural habitat, and the life rejuvenating process is very quick. This makes it nearly impossible to get an accurate estimate of their age. And that's it. We've made it through our current pile of weirdness to the end of the show. Thanks for taking the ride with me. And as always, thank you for listening to the GSMC Weird News Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I would like to ask that you please remember to subscribe to the show and write a nice review. That really helps us. Also, if you can, please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thank you, and have a good night. Be good to each other.